Welcome to Who Knew. We are fans of the current series of Doctor Who, and here we discuss our likes, dislikes, and insights into the modern regeneration of the show. Subscribe, review, and listen to us on iTunes and Stitcher, or our YouTube channel, youtube.com/WhoKnewPodcast. All our episodes are on WhoKnewPodcast.com. You can leave comments there, or email us at WhoKnewPodcast@gmail.com. We also have an Instagram and Twitter account. Tweet at us at WhoKnewPodcast, and find us on Facebook. Today we're taking our first trip into Big Finish Audio with the Time War volumes 1 through 4 that they did as a sort of prequel to the War Doctor series they were doing. This one has Paul McGann coming back as the 8th Doctor, and this takes place before the Night of the Doctor, when he regenerates into the young War Doctor, John Hurt, young War Doctor. Hi, this is Eugene. Let's introduce ourselves.
Howdy, this is Albert.
Hi, this is Brian.
Yeah, this is basically what they did to fill in the gaps of the Time War and how you fight a Time War. And we'll just we'll take it from volume 1. All right, the first volume starts off with the Starship of Theseus, where the Doctor and his companion at the time, Sheena, they land the TARDIS on a luxury space liner called the Theseus, and it's just about to leave Jupiter spaceport, and they go on a holiday. They kind of stow away, if you will. But there's a disturbance that catches their attention, and the events are sinister as they're on board, and the passengers are vanishing on every trip.
They have to be careful, or they may be next.
Yes, or they may be next, and that's when the Doctor. It starts off like a typical Doctor Who adventure, where we're plopped in the middle of something. We want to kind of see a site or something like a monument or a like the 7 wonders of the world type of thing, but galactical wonders. But then something happens that the Doctor's like, oh, I need to investigate the wrongdoings of this particular environment. So I think that that's kind of cool that they did that. But then this being the Time War, it gets confusing, which is what happens with his companion.
I honestly couldn't follow along. It was very difficult for me when all the time changes occur, and this is audio, so you don't know. There's no big reveal of the starship turning into a refugee ship, you know? So it's like he's just talking, and then all of a sudden he's calling his companion by a different name, and it's like, I don't remember her name, so I don't think there's anything weird. It was confusing for me.
I think I was lucky that you gave me a little warning about that. So when that happened, I was like, oh, this is the Time War. So I knew to pay a little bit closer attention to some of those things. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, they're specifically referencing Sheena, who becomes Emma, and then Louise. So it is very confusing.
And none of those are other companions of his.
No, this is the first time she shows up.
Okay.
So where do we lose that companion? When does it become just Bliss?
Later on.
I think Bliss is introduced in the next episode.
Oh, okay.
And it's just Bliss from that point on.
Okay.
Is that right?
Yes, because okay, I'm gonna rewind a little bit.
Yeah.
Because it opens with a cold open, again, like a traditional episode, where there is a Time Lord soldier piloting a battle TARDIS, trying to find a renegade Time Lord. So he crashes onto the Theseus, and Bliss shows up at the very end of the first episode. That's what it is.
Okay.
Because of all the time things happening, the Theseus has now changed from a luxury liner to a refugee ship, and he meets some other people. And then there's I think Daleks start to invade the ship, and then Bliss shows up with a regression weapon and blows up these Daleks.
Okay.
Yeah, and the entire episode plot just goes away.
That happens to each of these discs.
Yeah. But it is cool to hear Paul McGann. He's like we mentioned in the Night of the Doctor short episode, there is no grace period or let me find out who my doctor is type of thing.
Right.
It's like right away, this guy knows he's the doctor. He knows who his doctor is. And it's great. I wish some of these were filmed and televised. I think they would be better. They would solve some of these problems we're talking about.
After the initial shock and getting used to it, it did feel very much like watching Doctor Who. Like after I got over it, and I think maybe even the story settled a little bit into the like Bliss and the Doctor being our main
Our focus.
Our focus, yeah.
Yeah.
Like after that, like yeah, each of the little stories part of the disc felt like a Doctor Who episode. Once you figure out like the pace and the structure of them, then you can enjoy them.
Yeah, because again, it starts off like an episode, but then it becomes its own thing entirely.
Mm-hmm.
Back to more effects of the Time War. This TARDIS pilot, Time Lord soldier, he dies, but he doesn't regenerate. And even the Doctor calls out that he has regeneration inhibitors. So that is a weapon the Daleks are using against the Time Lords.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I like it.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. Oh, and this first episode is also where we meet Quarren and Rupa, who are going to be sort of the other pseudo companions for this this story that we're going to follow.
The Adrix?
Yes. So the end of Volume 1, they crash land on a jungle planet. The Doctor doesn't have his TARDIS because of the Time War effects on the ship. He left it in a broom closet. He goes there. It's not there. Or it's just the box, I think. And then so they go, this Dalek ship crashes, I believe, on the Theseus. That's where Bliss shows up. So the Doctor gets the idea to take the Dalek time spaceship and fly it out of the Theseus.
Isn't it also they discover that there's like areas of spatial time disturbance and
Yeah.
they need to get away? No, that's on the planet.
Oh, wait. Yeah, you're right. It's all right.
Yeah.
I'm getting these confused. But yes, it is on the planet.
Yeah,
And the other
sorry.
thing, it's okay. The other thing that we have at the end of the first episode is there is an Ogron that shows up and a Dalek also that are on another crashed Dalek ship on the same planet.
I really like the Dr. Ogron and then the continued like manifestations of the Doctor throughout the book or the
Like
audio the series. Volumes.
Like I think of them as audio Easter eggs because we don't see what he looks like. We just hear lines that we're familiar with.
Yeah.
But it's weird. That's all in the first volume. So they set everything up, but it's very confusing if you don't have visuals to follow these. So
I couldn't follow it.
But I still enjoyed them, but I also took the time to listen to them more than once.
Oh wow.
I mean, my commutes at the time helped me to listen to these more than once.
Yeah, they're
I
not.
just have
Go ahead, Brian.
I was just gonna say real quick. I just have an issue with falling asleep, so I couldn't do it while I was driving.
Yeah, I changed them. Like usually, I walk in the neighborhood and listen to podcasts. I changed to this. It's definitely a different experience. Like I usually listen to either political or tech podcasts, which are pretty dry. But
No,
listening to like
really?
the time war happening, and like there's a few times that I had headphones in and I had to like turn around because I felt like something was sneaking up on me. I was like, wait, what? I'm like, no, just outside. It's just in my head. But yeah, good audio mix.
Oh yeah, the production feels as if it was filmed and they just took out the video portion and left us with everything else. Oh, the other thing I wanted to point out is that this is very much the Doctor in the moment where they're sneaking on board the ship and they're pretending to be in the cabaret act for the entertainment of this luxury liner, and they use the psychic paper, and the security guard is like, "Oh, you're very good. There was nothing there at first." So I was like, "That's very much in the vein of the Doctor."
Yeah, he was the magician, or he was
Yeah.
playing. Yeah, that's good.
And then the disappearing act is that we never see Emma or Louise or Sheena again.
Or the people who disappeared, or any of that storyline.
Yeah,
Well-
that's
Bliss has some connections to the Theseus though later, doesn't she? Like she was on it. Like later, she was doing a research mission on it.
I think you're right, but there was such a small line. I don't remember anything else.
Basically, they just kept changing. Like it's just changing constantly. Like what it means, what it was.
Yeah.
I do have to say, I would not recommend this for new viewers.
There's nothing to watch.
Yeah, but if you're new to trying to listening to an audio drama, don't start with this.
Oh yeah.
Because I was bonkers lost. Just couldn't follow it. And still even kind of can't. So
I mean, the reason we're doing this is because it ties in with the Time War, which we're in the middle of now. So there's a lot that you have to know to kind of understand what's going on.
Yeah.
As a volume, though, it really does make the Time Wars feel very expansive. Like, we're on different worlds. There's whole peoples being destroyed and coming back. Like, it definitely gives it more weight than, what we have in the show.
Yeah, like a line and then 2 shorts. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
and that idea of, like, how destructive it is to those, like, who have no idea that it's even happening. And it's just like, it's definitely 2 huge imperial armies that, we're all just like cannon fodder in between.
And collateral damage.
Yeah.
Well, that's good because that brings us into this is episode 2 of volume 1. We call it 1.2, Echoes of War, where we are in the jungle planet. The doctor and his crew have crashed and they have to kind of figure out what's going on. And this is where we see I would say a bystander planet being affected by the ravages of the Time War, because you see certain pieces, or in this case, it was like the jungle, the tree, plant life.
Yeah, the war's ripping this planet back and forth through time.
Yeah, where it was going evolutionary, accelerating evolutionary very quickly, and then decaying, and then going back. And then it said, I think I wrote down, everything is in a constant state of flux. Things age 1,000 years in 2 minutes. The forest dies and grows and dies again. The doctor says this is the fallout from the Time War. So I remember one of our questions on the show was, how do you fight a Time War? Where it's kind of like this, where the other thing that happens is that there are primates living in the trees, and then they evolve, but it gets messed up with because they're accelerated and mutated, but not in the proper way that time gives us mutations that are sort of beneficial natural and beneficial to our environment, where I think they have multiple limbs, and then it's forced down a horrible evolutionary path is what I can't remember who it is, but it's a scientist on this crew says that. And then we have Dahl, who is a Dalek with memory loss.
He's such a doll.
Yeah. That they befriend. And I was very, I guess, empathetic toward this Dalek by the time this happened.
I thought it was silly at first, and then by the end it was like, aww.
Well, because they did a good job of making it still a Dalek, but applying it to non-vengeful, evil things. Like, Dahl is super loyal. He wants to protect the people that he is with, and he wants to help the doctor. And he even at one point, I think, does something with his onboard computer and then uploads it to the doctor's screwdriver. It's just weird things that, like, this is still a Dalek, but the motivations are different, and it makes it like you almost want him on your team.
Well, without his memory, it's like a child. It's an innocent child, but it's still genetically a Dalek, so it still has those characteristics of loyalty and, all that kind of stuff. It just doesn't know what it's to be loyal to.
But like in this case, there was that point where the doctor disappeared for a while, and the doctor was the leader, and then he goes, there's a fondness between, talking to Bliss, there's a fondness between you and the doctor, so naturally you are second in command. And I was like, oh, that's cool, that because like normally a Dalek would want to take charge if they want prisoners or something, or in a battle. They would be like, you're the enemy, I'm taking you captive.
I mean, right off the bat, the volumes, really making us look at both the Daleks and the Time Lords in different ways. And like, our enemy, like, it uses the enemy a lot because everyone refers to the other side as the enemy, but who really is the bad guy keeps kind of shifting as we learn more and as the Time War keeps shifting.
But yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the shifting, I guess, points that we see, the Time Lords and the Daleks. We are introduced to Cardinal Illustra, and she uses time torpedoes on battle TARDISes to draw the Dalek saucers onto the surface of the jungle planet so that they can start a ground attack. And that's where they find the doctor and the group, and then we meet Captain Tamizan. She's the one that kills Dahl. Spoiler alert. So that was sad. I was like, I didn't think I was going to feel for Dahl, but that's it. He's gone. And
and everybody else wanted to kill him too, right?
In the beginning, because they knew who or what Daleks are. But then once they got to know that Dahl didn't have those memories of being an oppressive force, they kind of accepted him.
When he was, he was essential to them being able to navigate those time
rifts,
those rifts, corruptions, with so that they could be safe.
Mm-hmm. So this one, episode 2, ends with the TARDIS getting taken, Tamizan taking the Doctor and his crew, and then the Doctor gets drafted or conscripted, I guess is the colloquial term in the UK, into the war by Illustra unwillingly.
It's a word here too.
Yeah, but we use drafted like you're getting drafted into the army.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, all right. Okay. I'll give you that. All right. Yeah. Acceptable. Proceed.
Episode 2 is the conscript, which is about the Doctor being put into sort of a boot camp with a bunch of other conscripts in the barracks, and we see how defiant the Doctor is. He doesn't like giving or taking orders, he likes giving them. And his screwdriver gets smashed by Commander Halran, I think is his name, because they're put into that usual thing where you have to take apart your weapon and then put it back together, but in this case they're building stasers, which we saw in The Deadly Assassin, which I thought was cool that they used that same, like, I guess it's the 70s, that when that came out, that 70s sound effect of the staser. I was like, oh, that's cool, they kept that.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun, like seeing Time Lords and like the military structure like of Time Lords in this case was really cool. And also, kind of some of those classic tropes where you have the old wizened guy who's like, you all should be enjoying yourselves, you kids, you're going to war, what's up with this? Like, you should be going to the cliffs of whatever, or this place. That was kind of cool.
And then the Doctor was the kind of like breaking down why the commander is doing what he's doing. He's like, this is to beat you down into submission, to then mold you into what they want to be. And then this is all supposed to be like not mob mentality, but sort of like you go with what the group is doing.
I mean, definitely like the tactics of collective punishment and things, a very strict military regime.
Yeah.
And in some ways it fit for the Time Lords.
And they also mentioned the CIA again, which is not the Central Intelligence Agency, but the Celestial Intervention Agency, which we also had that same question in The Deadly Assassin because they brought that up as well. And looking more into it, they're kind of like the classic Who. The Time Lords were very Star Trek, and we don't interfere. We just kind of like watch everything. The Prime Directive doesn't allow us to interfere, but the CIA, the Celestial Intervention Agency, are the ones that know the proper timeline. So if something is wrong, they are the ones to go in and interfere to put it back on the right path.
Hey, that sounds like a Marvel show.
Doctor Who did it first. They probably didn't, but before Marvel. Oh, so tying this into the last day, while they're in the barracks, the Commander Harlan, I think is his name, mentions that these new recruits won't get an easy assignment of Arcadia and the Sky Trenches because they think that the Sky Trenches are super safe. He's saying you guys will actually be fighting. You won't be in a cushy job in the war. Yeah,
that was neat, the reference to that. There's so many time weapons that are just like normal weapons. You just say time in front of them, and then they're
like, this is a time recording. This is a time microphone.
Yeah, this is a time torpedo. This is a time gun. Like, but what are you gonna do? It's time.
I mean, it's a time war, so you're gonna fight it with time weapons. So.
Yeah.
I was gonna say the Doctor has some great dialogue in here. The reason, it goes into a little bit of the reason why he's not fighting in the war. I don't remember all of it, but I just remember one part where he says, "I wouldn't know where to begin. It's too big. It's too big for me." And it's like, I'll just creep along the edges and help people.
Yeah, which is very much like the Doctor. Well, I'm specifically mentioning or talking about like the helping out people part.
Yeah, the helping. Yes. Yeah. He can't
not help.
He can't not help. Yeah, but he won't fight.
And then so to bring this into the Time War, the recruits are on like a training mission where they're trying. To me, it's like reading a map. What's that called when it's not frontiering. There's a term where you go out and you read a map and a compass. There's a term for it. They train people to do this, but they're doing that with Time War stuff, and they spot a Dalek ship or a Dalek saucer, and they report it back to base, and then the person they're reporting back to is like, "Oh no, that's real. We have to get ready for an attack." And so they get attacked. The Doctor tells everyone to run instead of joining Tamazan into battle, and I thought that, again, that was very Doctor. It's like, don't fight, but also run. Is a common theme with the modern Doctor. And then there's a person that is part of his I guess bunk mate crew, Vida. She tells the Doctor where his friends are being imprisoned, as well as how to get his TARDIS out of the docking bay, if you will, or whatever. But when they arrive, he gets all like Quarren and Rupa and Bliss out of where they're being held, and then goes into the hangar, finds the TARDIS, but then Illustra and her troops surround him, and so that's why he can't get out of that. And then Illustra says, maybe if I shoot you, you will regenerate into a version that is more willing to fight the Time War. So that's where episode 3, volume 1 ends. It's a nice cliffhanger because I'm like, she's gonna shoot the Doctor.
There's a lot of death. I mean, it is a war, but a lot of characters die, and the Time Lords are. I feel like they're a little flippant about regenerations. Like with each other, with their soldiers, with stuff. But was there a limit at this point? Canon. Okay.
Yeah, if you're following classic Who, but then this is a war, so maybe they did something to up the number. Who knows?
Yeah,
I think it's just they're in the middle of a war. They do what they got to do.
This is jumping ahead a little bit, but there is somebody called the 12, which that's the last regeneration. It should be, because that person is being called by the number of regenerations, and it doesn't feel like the 12 is almost done. It doesn't feel that way. That's just my own.
Were they from Classic Who, or is it just part of this story?
No.
Were they the 10 or 9? I just thought the 6 was the one that was really.
I mean, this thing is so dense that to break everything down is nearly impossible.
But that was an interesting character.
Yeah.
There was a lot of very interesting, like, Time Lord-ish characters.
You know what? When we get to it, I'll try to find out if this was a classic villain or classic person. Volume 1, Episode 4 is then One Life. I'll just read this. As the full force of the Time War crashes down around the Doctor and his friends, a desperate battle for survival ensues. But not everyone is playing the same game. Illustra is after a weapon that could end the war in a stroke, and she'll sacrifice anyone or anything to take it back to Gallifrey, even the Doctor. This begins with Rupa and Quarren meeting for the first time. So again, this could be confusing if you just jumped in. You're like, I don't know who Rupa and Quarren are, but they're on their first date. They're in a club, which I thought was the Theseus, but it's not. And then we cut back between their timeline and their relationship and the if you will, quote unquote, modern time of the Doctor and Illustra and Bliss trying to navigate the Time War.
And in this episode, is that where everything with Rupa's husband, what's his name? Quarren. Is that where his story wraps up this episode?
Let me see. Hold on.
I think so.
Yes, this is where Quarren is done.
So just like our Doctor has done, he's hidden himself inside of a human body
using
a Horcrux. What is
the word we were looking for was chameleon arch.
Chameleon arch, all right.
which we saw in the Family of Blood in season 3 with Martha. So I thought that was cool that in episode 1, the renegade Time Lord they are looking for is not the Doctor. It is Quarren. So I thought that was a nice bait and switch. And then it's revealed that Quarren is a Time Lord that has the power to rewrite history with his thoughts. I'm like, this guy is super powerful. What are you doing?
Well, I like that, he like similar to what we've seen, like the weapons, the ultimate weapons that the Time Lords built, like don't look like, a bomb or a cannon. They're intelligent beings that have
Yes.
the ability to reshape the universe. And so then they all have a conscience about being used in that way. So that was neat to
Yeah.
also have that tie-in.
And they look like Billy Piper.
And this is again jumping ahead, but all of these weapons, if you will, are all stored. All these sentient weapons are all stored in the Omega Arsenal, which they also mentioned in. I think it was the Day of the Doctor.
Yeah, that's where the moment was, and
So
they'd used all the weapons in that archive except the moment.
And I just thought that was really cool that this televised thing with visuals and sound tied so much into this thing with just sound. It's like one universe all in continuity.
Sorry, so you had said that in the story this comes before the War Doctor. When was this released? Like, was it after the TV show, or was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
It was in 2017, at least.
Okay.
That's what I'm reading right now.
Yeah, because then they filled in the gaps for us, sort of, if you will.
It was at this point though that I think I was starting to realize that each disc or each like volume that had the different episodes was kind of telling its own story.
Yeah.
And then each episode was had the overarching story, but it was also very episodic. It's a different type of storytelling that was fun to get experience with.
Yeah. So
and I need to come clean and say we've just passed where I listened. I haven't listened after this point.
I think it gets better, Brian. I think you might time is time. So, but you might enjoy it.
You already mentioned the other Time Lords and Quarren, and it's like, oh, that sounds cool.
Oh, okay.
So,
yeah.
Like, all right. So, but I wasn't really liking. I thought it was very slow. It was like, I don't need the Doctor in barracks.
It is.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like when you think of Volume 1, I'm like, that's one episode. Why?
Did you get you heard the Ogron Doctor?
Did we hear the Ogron Doctor yet? I mean,
or is
other than that first time, I think it's in the next volume.
Oh, okay.
Well, I want to mention here that the Daleks use a reversal wave on the moon of Tenacity. It regresses the entire star system, not just the moon, in time. So that's another way they're fighting a time war. They're regressing things, not just advancing and dying and then advancing again. The TARDIS, the Doctor's TARDIS, that is still repairing itself. So it's mentioned that it can only travel in space, being like a car and not a time machine. Like you can't travel to a different time out of here. And then I really like this. The cloister bell rings because it's still working, but it's not like 100%. So it's still trying to warn the Doctor that something is wrong. The Doctor explains to Bliss what it is, and she goes, "The tolling? That's just the cloister bell. Don't worry about that for now. It's not terribly significant." And then she goes, "Are you sure about that? Because to me, that sounds like lying." He replies with, "Sometimes, Bliss, it's best you don't know. Like they say, ignorance is quite nice sometimes." I just laughed at that. It was just great. Okay, and then the end, Quarren decides that he will help the Doctor by reverting back to a Time Lord and forgetting his human life he had with Rupa, and he erases himself from history. It's very Deus Ex Machina, but it's fine. It worked for me.
It was sad because then I think you get a little bit of Rupa, right, that never got to meet Quarren.
Yeah. But then it's funny that the Doctor's like, "Are you happy? I don't know why I should be asking you this, but I want to know." After it all happens, because Quarren has ripped himself out of time.
Why does he do that?
Because he doesn't want to fight the war.
Oh, interesting.
and that's why he ran and turned himself into a human.
Oh, okay.
Because he didn't want to be a weapon.
Yes.
Yeah, I like it, and that was one that like the Time Lords made him, right? Like genetically modifying or
I think I mean
something.
that's the hint that I get from
Yeah.
Illustra, because Illustra wants to use him to fight the war.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
she's probably the one that sent that pilot in earlier.
Mm. But yeah, lots of things change. I mean, there's big like yeah, when he leaves, like there's big changes to the universe.
How do you think that they did with that? Because it's all theater of the mind with sound.
Oh, I don't know. I don't remember the specific like sound
Okay.
design of it.
I'm just wondering what it would look like visually if somebody
Mm,
had the budget.
yeah. Well, I think we've seen like representations of going through all of somebody's history, like just with Clara going through the
Mhm.
that time scar.
Yeah. Anyway, that's just
Yeah.
something I like playing in my brain.
Yeah.
So that's volume one. It's kind of sad. It's a sad ending with Rupa not knowing the love of her life, Quarren, but Quarren saving the doctor. Volume 2, Episode 1 is The Lords of Terror. When the Doctor takes Bliss to her home colony, they discover that the Time War has gotten there first. Bliss finds that her world has been altered beyond recognition, and the population is now working to serve new masters. So this is where the Doctor takes Bliss home, and she's like, where's my house? It's not here. Where's my mom and dad? So it feels very much like a dystopian 1984 kind of Big Brother is watching you, but you are to help the war effort type of thing.
Yeah, they end up all in like dome cities,
Yeah.
like and they're all making rockets to for the war effort.
Yep.
Like, yeah, it was good to get Bliss's like perspective because she has memories, of a peaceful planet, and now it's been transformed, like you said, into just a factory for the
war machine.
For the war machine of the Time Lords or the Daleks. I forget. They're kind of both.
I don't remember because there are resistance fighters. Like there's an underground, but then it's revealed that that's all a trap to kill the insurgents and trap them. Because they're like, there's a resistance. How do you know? Well, they're broadcasting, and then they follow that signal in the tunnels underground, and they get killed by humans. So that's what makes me think it's the Time Lords, but I don't know. I don't remember. Sorry for our listeners out there.
It goes back and forth.
Yeah, it does. Oh no, I want to say it is because they're using propaganda that the enemy is the Daleks. So it could be the Daleks engineering that whole fear mongering.
I'm seeing if I can find a summary.
I think it is the Illustra. Like I think she's in charge there, right? Like she keeps coming back as the Time Lord in charge.
You know what? I think you're right, because then Tamizan regenerates and becomes promoted to Major Tamizan.
But I mean, it is all meant to be a little bit wishy-washy because the Time War is still happening. So at some points, they are still that dome city. And then at other points, I think like her parents come back or are there for a little bit.
I think they do sort of come back.
So it does make remembering specific instances, like you're doing the same thing that the characters are doing. You're like, wait a minute, are my parents dead? Are they not dead?
Yeah.
What's my memory? What's not?
Yeah. So it's weird that you are confused by listening to these volumes, these episodes, but is it good that you're kind of with the characters? I don't know. I'm reading here that the Daleks tell the people of Derelobia, which is where Bliss is from, that the Daleks tell the people to cancel their rocket launches and surrender. So that makes me think that the Time Lords are part of the problem in that this is a war factory.
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway from that is that both sides were willing to sacrifice like innumerable innocent lives and planets and however much to win the war. But yeah, that was a lot about propaganda and yeah, who's really pulling the strings.
Yes, for sure. So I guess it doesn't matter who's behind the dome cities in Derelobia.
Yeah,
They're both
I
bad
couldn't
guys.
find anything.
So let's see here. This ends with the doctor believing that there could be a way to fix the planet and restore it back to what Bliss knows with her mother and father. And he thinks that can happen once the time war has ended. But until then, they have to look out for each other and help away from the battlefields. They can't, again, the doctor trying to stay out of the war. So then episode 2 in volume 2 is Planet of the Ogrons. This is where they're still trying to avoid the time war. The doctor and Bliss are found by an old acquaintance. The latest incarnation of a mastermind the doctor knows of old. But unlike his predecessors, the 12 has a handle on her previous selves' unruly minds. So that's what made me think the 12 is a classic character. I'm going to look that up right now.
So when we
So the
meet,
12 is
go ahead.
Nope, it's not. They make you think it is, but this is first introduced in this. This is the first time we hear of the 12. So
it's
good
not the
job.
Doctor, and it's not the Doctor.
No, it's not the Doctor.
It's another Time Lord.
Yeah, it's another renegade Time Lord. But this Time Lord, the 12, suffers from regenerative dissidence, whatever that may be. It's an illness, mental illness seen in Time Lords. That's what it is.
So like all of her past regenerations are still like voices in her head.
Yes.
Oh, that would be fun.
But she has a neural inhibitor that she's using to quiet that most of the time.
Most of them, yeah.
There's one psychopath, number 6, that she lets out here and there to do some dirty work.
Yeah.
Sounds like Jadzia Dax.
A little bit like that. A little bit. Have you guys seen Moon Knight? Like,
yes.
It's kind of that personality dissociative disorder. Not quite. Like, I think she's still
in control.
Yeah. Because of the inhibitor. But if it wasn't for that, then the alter egos would take over. She was a cool character, and she's with them for a while after they meet up.
Yeah. This is where we get the Dr. Ogron back.
Okay. So there's an Ogron, which is like a very primitive something, but
yeah,
it's got the Doctor's. It is the Doctor, or there was like some experiment where it ended up with the Doctor's psyche. Yeah,
that's the weird thing where I'm not sure, because how do you do that in an audio drama? Like, tell us, other than somebody going, let's perform an experiment, and this is why this is the way it is. You can't do that. I don't know, that sounds boring. But Ogrons are a classic Doctor Who, I guess monster is the best way to say it, because they look ogre-like. They were first introduced in Day of the Daleks, which I think is the it's the third Doctor. And they are just like, they look almost like the classic Centauran, but I guess bigger.
Okay.
They're not as diminutive, I guess.
And in the classic Who, were they also kind of used by the Daleks as like muscle?
That I don't know, but I think they sounded the same, that like reverby type of, you can tell some work was done to their audio.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't really know them that much.
They kind of look like Lord of the Rings orcs.
Yeah. So yeah, it was like a low, slow, cavemanish kind of voice.
Yeah.
But they like had they wrote it as the Doctor, but still kind of that like caveman grammar. So I liked it. It was an interesting character.
It was. I didn't know what to think about it at first. I was like, oh.
And
especially it grew on me.
Especially with the Time War and everything, you're like, sure, maybe this Doctor regenerated into an Ogron. Why not?
See, that's what I thought, that this was a different evolutionary track of the Doctor that was brought in from like a parallel timeline, because if it's a time war, so you can do that.
Yeah.
But okay, so looking it up here, it says that the Dr. Ogron was experimented on by the Dalek Overseer and given the Doctor's personality.
Okay.
Which Doctor, or just a Doctor personality?
It just says the Doctor's personality.
I think Paul McGann's Doctor. Like,
it is?
Yeah.
They don't say it specifically, but...
No, but I think it's like Paul McGann and everything before it. But it also has stuff after it as well. like the sayings that he does.
Right.
Because I'll go through that real quick right now. Where he says, a tear bliss, that's a reference to the third Doctor's final words before his regeneration in Planet of the Spiders. And then he says, the definite article, you might say. That's a reference to the fourth Doctor in his, I think it's Robot, the first full episode of Tom Baker. And then he says Braveheart, which is a reference to the fifth Doctor. And then he says, who am I? Which is a reference to the eighth Doctor, which I thought was great. And then I Don't Want to Go, referencing End of Time with the 10th Doctor. Trust Me, I'm the Doctor, reference to the 11th Hour with the 11th Doctor. Oh, and then, since we're just going out of time, this is very loose. The Dr. Ogron eventually regenerates, and he says, I'm still ginger. So he's happy that he's ginger.
Yeah. He like regenerates into another Ogron, right? But
Yes.
yeah, it's a funny twist of wording. Like
So
here.
So that's why I kind of like this guy. He grew on me.
Yeah.
Oh, and then at one point, the Doctor, Paul McGann, and the Dr. Ogron compare sonic screwdrivers, just like in the Day of the Doctor with the 10 and 11.
Compensating.
Yeah, one of them says, it's bulbous. I don't remember how that one ends, but I think it's with the Dr. Ogron regenerating.
Sure. Eventually he dies, but
yeah,
probably not yet. And it was sad.
Yeah, that's right. He regenerates. The 12 and Bliss are taken prisoner, and the Doctor are taken prisoner. And he takes a hybrid TARDIS and leaves before the base explodes. What base? I don't remember. Right, so then we go on to Volume 2, Episode 3, In the Garden of Death. In a prison camp, like no other, the most dangerous man in the universe is held in isolation. The rest of the inmates have no memory of who they were or what they may have done. So this is the one that I think they go blind. Is that right? At first? Maybe I'm thinking of a different one. But
I don't remember them being blind.
There was one point where they're normal, and then something happens, and then Bliss and the Doctor go blind. That could be a different episode.
It might be.
Yeah. But anyway, I do remember this one being confusing because they're like, who are you? Who are you? Who are you?
So the prison, like when they're in the prison, there's like a memory inhibitor, so they don't remember who they are. So that's why when they're in prison, they call each other like weird names like Alpha something.
Mm-hmm.
But then they go get interrogated by the Daleks, and when they're in the interrogation room, their memory comes back.
Okay, I do remember that.
Yeah, that makes for an interesting, because they're all like, oh, as soon as I go to get interrogated, I'll remember everything. But then, they're getting tortured and interrogated.
Then you don't remember it after, yeah.
Yeah.
This sounds frustrating.
There's a lot of other prisoners, so we get some new characters. And we also see how devious 12 is. She takes somebody's mechanical leg and uses it to...
Oh, right. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, 12 does some weird stuff.
Yeah. This one, it's kind of got that Guardians of the Galaxy with taking prosthetic limbs. It's kind of got a little Severance with the memory, being separated.
And it's got, World War II, Vietnam type of internment camp stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just reading here to give them credit. winteriscoming.net. The reviewer says that he or she was very close to rolling their eyes because the Eighth Doctor has amnesia again. And then in parentheses it says, for those of you who don't know, the number of times the Eighth Doctor has lost his memory across various media is about the same number of times that 12 punched the wall in Heaven Sent.
That's true. I don't remember much about this other than the interrogations of each character.
Mm-hmm. There's some fun sound design because the prison is supposed to be very simple, so there's no technology for them to use, but the Daleks are monitored. So there's no cameras, they've been told, but the Daleks are monitoring them with little mosquito bug cameras.
I do remember that now, yeah.
So when characters are talking and then you hear the little bzzz, the surveillance is coming.
Yeah. I'll read how this ends. Alistra asks Tamazan what she makes of 12's message. What message? I don't remember. Tamazan believes that the interrogation might have damaged a memory block on the 12, and that she now has information which she does not realize the worth of, or is deliberately withholding from them, meaning Alistra and Tamazan. She has run a matrix trace, which is back in the the deadly assassin, not the Keanu Reeves Wachowski Matrix.
Oh yeah.
Trace on the 12's previous selves travels and found that they visited Uzmal and should be sent back under close supervision. The Doctor and Bliss will join her. So it feels like they're not quite done with the camps, or being held prisoner, I mean. All right, so then we go to Volume 2, Episode 4, Jonah.
This is a good one.
Yeah. In the depths of an ocean world ravaged by the Time War, the weary survivors are pressed into service by Cardinal Alistra. Okay, so this is the other time where they get drafted. Something is hidden beneath the sea. The 12 knows the truth, if only she could drag it from her jumbled mind. And when the Doctor becomes the captain of a submarine boat, all omens spell disaster.
So now they're in an ocean where energy weapons and time weapons don't work. So that's why they're using these old school looking submarines. But again, it's another planet that was not in the war, that the Time Lords came and are I think they helped defeat the Daleks or defended them against the Daleks. But now they're kind of taking over to do their own thing.
I'm glad you reminded me of that, because when I first listened to this, I'm like, why is he in a sub?
Yeah.
Is it because of the Ninth Doctor connection of the U-boat captain costume? But it's not.
So then, I think it's all within this episode, but there's a beast that's living in the ocean.
Yes.
Another potential weapon that it has the ability to also change time and space. And so it went to this world with the time dampening ocean to hide.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of creatures that can change time.
Yeah, and the Time Lords are trying to find all of them, the Time Lords and the Daleks.
It's like Doctor Who Pokemon style. Gotta catch them all.
Yeah. This was the Uruk guy? No. What was it?
That would be Lord of the Rings. The Uruk-hai?
Yeah. Do you have in your notes what this thing was called?
Hold on. Does it talk or no?
It does talk. I think it's an O name.
It's just Alistra. Omar? No, that's not it.
I think it is Uruk-hai. It's Oro something. Hold
on, let's see. The Bloodhound submarine is what they're on. It fires torpedoes. There's another submarine, the Peacemaker, which is captained by Major Tamizan, even though she's a major. She's captaining. That's funny. They discuss energy weapons in Uzmal's waters, but that's the name of the planet.
Yeah.
Executive Officer Omar interrupts.
Maybe it is the Uzmal.
Maybe. I don't remember the name. Sorry, listeners. I don't remember.
Lots of fun, underwater sound, and you have to be quiet because the Daleks are coming and they can hear you. So yeah. And then the 12 is going crazy, so trying to keep her quiet. She begins singing at some point.
Yes.
While they're trying to hide from the Daleks, avoid depth charges.
I'll read the.
I do like the fact that there's a submarine named Jonah. It's a great name for a submarine.
Well, he was named Captain Jonah. They nicknamed him.
Oh, the Doctor?
Yes. I think at the end they explain it because Bliss told one of the crew that Jonah was bad luck on a boat or something. There was a reason at the very end where Bliss came up with the name Jonah. Nickname. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Jonah's been typically in Earth mythology unlucky with the sea.
Mm-hmm. At the end, I think the beast, they almost catch it. The Daleks try to get it, and it's you will die, and then the Doctor says, no, that's just how he greets things because it's like an eternal animal or something.
Oh man, that's funny.
Yeah, but then I think it works to get rid of the Daleks on that planet at least.
It's the Oroshima.
Yeah, that's it.
I remember now. And the thing about that is it can see multiple futures, and it has the ability to accurately predict the outcome of every choice. I'm just reading this here. They are widely believed to be mythical, but the Daleks seek to gain their power, and so naturally Tamizan and Alistra want to stop the Daleks.
And I think it even offered its power to the Doctor because it was dying at the Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. So the Bloodhound is the sub that the Doctor is on. It's slowly. This is the end of this episode. It's slowly sinking. Bliss is surprised to find that she is alive and wonders how the Dalek's missile fused and self-destructed, given that the waters are usually on a quantum level. The Doctor suggests that they let the Bloodhound drift for a while, hiding them from the Dalek's heat sensors while he visits the 12 in the brig. So that's where episode 4 ends, I believe. Is that 4? Episode 4?
I think it's 4.
Yeah, episode 4 ends. Okay, so we move on to Volume 3, Episode 1, State of Bliss. So Bliss has lost her home, her family, and her friends, an orphan of the Time War. The Doctor attempts to find out where things went wrong. Across a multiverse of possibilities, Bliss discovers the many paths her life could have taken, but do they always lead to the Time War?
This was a weird one. This was all in Bliss's memories, or like she was living different worlds. Sometimes the Doctor was her grandfather. Sometimes I think he was a professor.
This one I found to be like, I think it would have been a better televised, like a filmed episode, because you could see the differences in the timelines as they splintered. Where hearing it, I mean, Bliss sounds like Bliss. She doesn't have a different wardrobe. You can't tell things like that.
Yeah.
She doesn't have a goatee.
Yeah, a Mirror Universe goatee or a sash.
Yeah, I'm not sure I remember much about this other than like
I
all the
don't
different like ways, because it was kind of like things kept forming. Like sometimes the Doctor was the Doctor, sometimes, like I said, he was her grandfather, sometimes he was a professor, and she was like trying to figure out what was real and what wasn't.
Yeah, I unfortunately don't remember much of this because of that.
I don't think I could get through this. I have memory problems anyway.
Yeah,
But
Okay.
I just,
I mean,
listening to this is like, wait, I can't even follow what you guys are saying, let alone the episode.
and as I'm listening to it, it's 2022. We're like 3 months into the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and so I mean, it is very like it's still sci-fi, but you're
It's
listening to a
topical.
war, and
Yeah.
you know that like across the world, like war is happening, and so kind of that fog of war, also that there's propaganda happening on both sides, and people are just trying to like survive. So it's been weird listening to it, I will say. Like, part of it is kind of like a downer because you're in a war, like with the biggest of stakes, while you're listening, even though it is a show, or entertainment.
Yeah, that is weird how topical it is today, but I think that's what makes good sci-fi good, is that it is an allegory. It is universally topical. Anyway, so moving on to Volume 3, Episode 2, The Famished Lands. Trying to make a difference far from the front lines, the Doctor and Bliss arrive in the Vale of Iphtheus, where the Time War is starving populations out of existence.
Now, it wasn't until you reminded me of Volume 1 that the Theseus, was trying to get by in the hyperspace or hyperlane routes.
Yes.
Past the trolls under the bridge. I'm using air quotes.
Yeah. They were in Jupiter or something like that, and then they were trying to get out of there.
But I think that like was one of the lines of those monsters like hungry. I'm hungry.
That's right. Hungry. Yeah.
Well, we revisit that in this episode. The famished lands, except it's not the trolls, it's the whole population.
It feels like
they are.
It feels like I Am Legend or like Omega Man, like that type of. These are humans, but they're pushed to the brink of being savages.
So due to the Time War, this planet has been cut off from supplies. Like they used to have trade routes, but they don't produce anything on their own planet, so the people are starving. And they make artificial nutrition called the ichor that people eat. And to the Doctor, it looks like goop, but I think to people that eat it, it like becomes whatever they imagine to be the best food.
It's Soylent Green.
Yeah.
It's paper. Paper.
But it doesn't actually provide any nutritional information or any nutrition to the
Sustenance.
people. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the people that do eat it become skeleton army people. Like they become skeletal soldiers, but not everybody.
Which could tie in to the last day when we saw that revived Time Lord soldier being very skeletal. The one note that I wrote here, because it ties into classic Who and what we've been doing, is that there's a panopticon session, which is kind of like the House of Lords or Commons or the Senate of Gallifrey and the Time Lords being put into session, and they're presented with the Doctor as a potential weapon, just like Quarren was. So I think that these guys are getting desperate that they're using the Doctor, the crazy outcast. He could be a weapon. I don't remember how that one ends. Sorry.
I think the Doctor wants to go to try to talk the Time Lords into protecting the trade route so that they can get nutrition again. But this one is also, I mean, it's pretty dark. So not the I-Core doesn't work on everybody, and the ones that it doesn't work on, they round up telling them that they're going to get them nutrition assistance and then just shoot them.
I do remember that now that you mentioned.
Wow.
Yeah.
Gosh, this sounds fun.
But the Doctor and Bliss are trying to, fight it. I think in this one, when the famished lands, they don't arrive there in the No, never mind.
I don't remember how they get there.
Yeah. They're trying to blend in a little bit, but not too hard, because everybody knows that, like they're not hungry enough. Yeah.
They're trying to look especially skeletal.
Yeah. They have to blend in better in a later episode.
So that brings us to episode 3, volume 3, which is Fugitive in Time. Returning a favor for Major Tamazan, the Doctor and Bliss accompany her to extract a dangerous fugitive from an isolated medieval world.
I didn't
write much. Yeah, I didn't write much about this one.
Might have accidentally skipped some of it.
That's okay.
A medieval world.
We get Vashto, Dracino, Shonath, and then the Veil Yard.
I do remember the Veil Yard.
Does that ring a bell?
Yeah.
Okay. It says here that the Shonath is the last of her kind and has her reasons to be wary of Time Lords.
This is the one where they come in like on a alien escape craft. And then they have to, they're trying to find Shonath, who's like the last of the Hesperia, because the Time Lords wiped out the Hesperia completely from the time, and they're like, how is there one left?
Yeah, and the Daleks also want her. I remember this now.
Yeah, because the Hesperia were like good at genetic modifications.
Yeah.
So that's where so there's a whole face-off in this episode between the Daleks and the Doctor representing the Time Lords.
Yeah.
Trying to tell the Shonath, who's the Hesperian, that he wants to help them, and the Daleks are like, no, we want to help you. So it's like a very, I think this was also the one where they were trying to go undercover because they knew that if Shonath found out that they were Time Lords, the Time Lords destroyed her whole race, so
she would want to help them.
Right.
Yeah.
But this was funny because Bliss is trying to convince the king of the world that she's a local, she's conscripted to become his not quite concubine, but
a servant-ish.
Yes. And so it's they're like, he goes to the tallest waterfall. He's like, every child knows the name of this waterfall. What is it? And there's just a few things like that where he's catching her in her ignorance. That was kind of fun, old school sci-fi kind of stuff.
I'm glad you remember this because I didn't until you started talking about it, where it feels like that each of these episodes is concentrated on somebody that is a potential weapon. Now that we're talking about it as a whole, I can see that.
Yeah. It's both sides trying to get one up on the other. And so they're just going through every old myth, every possible loose end that each left.
I mean, it almost reminds me of Hellboy. Like the premise is that Hitler, wanting to win the war, was looking for every avenue to take an advantage. So he started delving into mysticism and legend stuff.
Trinkets in the desert.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But this was another one where, so she was trying to find a transmat to go to another world to fix herself because she avoided the deletion of her whole race by genetically modifying herself just enough that she wouldn't get deleted. So she's in a lot of pain. And then I think the doctor tries to help her fix the transmat, but the Dalek transmat network was what she was connecting to. So he had to find a different network. Yeah.
That's funny that genetic manipulation to escape genocide reminds me of the Kryptonians in the Byrne era of Superman, where they were confined to Krypton. Anyway, that's a little bit of a nerd deep dive.
Right, but at the end, she had the genetic manipulator that everybody wanted.
Yeah. Did she destroy it? Is that right? I don't remember.
I'm not sure how it ended.
Okay. Well, moving on to Volume 3, Episode 4. The War Valeyard. The Valeyard has returned to the universe amid the Time War, and the Time Lords see his potential to end the conflict for good. So the Valeyard is a sinister renegade Time Lord. I've never seen anything that he's done, but they did mention the Valeyard in the one where they go to Transalore. The name of the Doctor? Where the great intelligence is listing off things that are bad about the Doctor, and the Valeyard is one of them. And
I think the Valeyard's in Trial of a Time Lord.
Yes, there's the first time we see the Valeyard is in the Trial of the Time Lord with the Sixth Doctor. That is a season-long story, and the Valeyard, he is an emanation or incarnation of the Doctor. He's always creating accounts that are different of his origin, kind of like Heath Ledger's Joker in The Dark Knight. He also runs out of regenerations and wants to steal the Doctor's. The Valeyard is described as the darker side of the Doctor's nature. That was by the Master in, I think, the Trial of the Time Lord.
In this instance, like the Valeyard is also kind of torn. Like we have almost two personalities of him. One that is more doctorish and one that is
more sinister.
Yeah.
So it'd be curious. I'm now curious to see what this classic Who, I guess, villain was like, if this is any different or the same. But yeah, it was kind of confusing for me for somebody to be called Valeyard, because I can deal with the Doctor, the Master. But Valeyard, the Valeyard, it sounds like a thing rather than a person. That's just me. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I'm trying to remember. I remember it was cool listening to it, like, because it's a good, it is kind of the Doctor, so it's a good foil to go against the Doctor. And again, like they're definitely like not trying to make any side black and white, like, because at some points I think he was more compassionate, but there was also like that he was fighting that Valeyard.
The Eighth Doctor says, "I am he and he is me," which is something that one of the Doctors says in the Three Doctor special to explain how there are three Doctors, but they're still the same person. So the Valeyard is part of the Doctor in some fashion. There was a reference to how he said he once recalled he had a chance to erase the Daleks at their very beginning, but didn't take it. And that's from Genesis of the Daleks. So it's funny that I think it was Russell that said the Time War started all the way in Genesis of the Daleks when the Time Lords took the first shot in trying to eliminate the Daleks completely.
Yeah, Russell, that was Russell's thing.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. I think that ties it all in really well.
I think by this point, Tamison has regenerated. That doesn't mean, I
don't remember, because she already did it once to become
was it
major.
The other? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Valeyard. This is the planet that, like, the memories are, like, stuff is happening on the planet that's also based on their memories, right? So this
is like a manifestation of their minds?
Yeah. So in this one, like, I think the Valeyard thinks he's the Doctor. Oh, okay, it's coming back. The Valeyard thinks he's the Doctor and thinks that he destroyed the Daleks.
Oh, yes. Now,
and is reliving it.
Yeah, but it's not.
But right, it's all in his memory. So in this one at the beginning, you get the Valeyard destroying Daleks. And then like as the Dalek's dying, he's like, you can't be the doctor because I am the doctor. Like it's a Dalek that thinks he's the doctor.
He's the doctor. Yes, I do remember that. Because that's very, like, I think he says, who am I?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's the eighth Doctor's line.
Yeah. But it's all because they're coming from his memories. That's why they all are part of the Doctor. But he has a cool screwdriver too. Like it's a neat sound effect. It's a very like
it's unique.
Yeah, it's more of a weapon. Like he uses it to destroy Daleks right away. Yeah. And
and then don't they steal Tamison's TARDIS at this point? Because they use it to track the Valeyard's biosignature.
Yes.
I think that's right. I'm remembering like you just bits of it.
Yeah.
I don't remember how it ends though. That's unfortunate.
I think they were either going to leave him to keep that loop or they were going to end it.
Okay.
50-50, one or the other.
Well, then we move on to Volume 4, Volume 4, Episodes 1 and 2 are Palindrome. In an alternate universe, Davros lives in peace until the Doctor and Bliss arrive, and the Daleks emerge in a new reality. This one might be my favorite, just because we get to see Davros in an alternate reality as a good scientist.
And this is one that I've only listened to the first part, so...
It's quite sad, because you get to see how happy he is with his wife, and then
Ew.
I think...
Sorry.
Davros, yeah.
Ew, I'm glad there's no pictures.
Well, Davros is a doll, and I think his wife is a thal.
Mm-hmm.
So even that to me was like, oh, that's nice that they were able to live at peace, even though that's what started the Daleks, is that civil war on Skaro.
Oh, that does sound nice. We're gonna have to destroy that.
So at least in the first part, I think part of the Thals and Dolls coming together is the Time Lords are their common enemy.
Yes, because this is an interesting part that I actually was able to follow, that Davros's days are going in a reverse order, like reverse Groundhog Day, because he's reliving things but backwards.
Mm-hmm.
So his first day, like if it's linearly, he starts off on a Friday, but then when he wakes up the next day, it's Thursday, and then he wakes up the next day, it's Wednesday.
That's like Merlin in the Once and Future King.
Yeah. And I don't know, it worked for me. I just really liked it that he knew about certain things, like when the Doctor would show up and Bliss would show up, but still be confused. It was kind of cool.
Yeah.
He wasn't a Khalid? They called them dolls?
You know, I don't remember. I just remember him specifically saying his wife is a Thal.
Okay.
At some point, they did mention Khalids, that
Okay,
somebody wanted to destroy all the Khalids. Are they both dolls and Thals? Are they both Khalids?
Originally, there were dolls and Thals, and then later on it became Khalids.
Okay.
I didn't know if they were trying to tie it back to our friend
Dalek?
Doll.
Oh, yeah, I don't remember.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm trying. I can't remember.
Oh, the first part was cool. Like I said, it's kind of has a Memento feel, because of course you're confused because you're just getting into the story, so you're with Davros more than anybody, but then you get more information as Davros does, and kind of like River and the Doctor, like you're going one way, and eventually Davros has more information than the Doctor does.
Yeah. And it's cool that it becomes like that Groundhog Day where he knows when the Doctor is going to show up at his door, but he only up to a certain point. And it's Terry Malloy that voices Davros, but he's voicing it as a regular guy. And then later on they add the reverb, and then you hear the Davros that we know. So I think that was cool that they got to cast Terry Malloy.
That's fun.
His wife, his name is Charn. I thought it was Chan at first, tying it into the end of the end of the world with season 3, but it's Charn.
You mean Utopia?
Utopia, yes, Utopia.
Well, the British can't say their R's right.
Chan.
Yeah. No, it was just nice to have Davros before he was that weirdo with the third eye and the wheelchair thing going on.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember how that went in. Sorry, I keep saying that a lot.
That's okay. That's as far as I've listened to so far. But I think I will finish it.
So Volume 4, Episode 3 is Dreadshade. The Time Lords, including the General and the 12, adjust to life after the Time War, until the Doctor and Bliss return with a warning. This is the one where it begins with the Doctor and Bliss arriving on a planet, and then their memories get scrambled because there's a I want to say like there's some sort of event that happens. They become blind, and then they're wandering, and then their memories come back, and then they start to see again, but then their memories are all jumbled. Okay, so this is saying that the war has stopped. So that's what happened. The war just stops. Nobody knows why. And then you have the Time Lord soldiers being like, what are we doing? They've lost their memories as well. They eventually find the Doctor, and people are being displaced. Refugees across time and space are misplaced. People fleeing from planets that no longer exist. Some worlds may have never existed in the first place. Whole planets have shifted. Some have vanished altogether. And war is over, but there is no peace. So I like that. It's like there's no fighting, but there's no peace.
Dogs and cats living together.
Mass hysteria.
Yeah.
One of these Time Lords recognizes the Doctor from his Swiss cheese memory, takes the Doctor to their, I think it's the War Council, and the Doctor's like, War Council? But we're in a time of peace. And they start to get memories back of what's going on. And this is where it's overtly mentioned that the Omega Arsenal has people as weapons. A bunch of people are in stasis, and they're just weapons waiting to be used at some point. They mentioned there's obliteration missiles. I was like, would you just say time warheads? So the 12 is the only Time Lord to retain memory of the Daleks after the Valeyard's actions erased them from existence. So I think that's why we have peace. I'm glad I wrote this part down because I was like, this is interesting. And the 12 is a she at this point, I believe. And she was in stasis when all her memories of the Daleks came back. So I think there's one point where I think she's talking to herself. I'm not sure because she's held in a cell and you hear like something with an echoey reverb as she tries to break out of the cell. So I don't know if that's another incarnation of her or if that is another physical person in the cell with her.
I did mention at the time, but one of the stories, she after her time on the prison planet with the interrogations, she's a Dalek sleeper agent.
Yeah,
for
I do remember that.
Yeah,
there's so much that happens in these. It's very dense.
And like also they do, at least this particular one, like every episode like really switches the direction.
Yeah.
So it can be hard to keep track of what you're doing.
It's even hard to keep track when you listen to them sequentially because they're like really different.
Yeah, I mean, one minute you're in a submarine under an ocean, and the next you're on the dome planet. Yeah. I mean, it is really like it is neat to see so many more Time Lords and to get that like kind of insider look at the Time War. But yeah, you're in for like you have to commit some time to it.
Oh, for sure. The Doctor here mentions the Master and the Rani when I think he's saying who is the Valeyard or who is the 12. I can't remember, but wanted to throw that out there that's again tying it in with our TV episodes. And then once Bliss regains her memory, she remembers the Ogrons, the Theseus. She says she remembers River Song, but I don't know if that's a jumbled memory she's receiving. And then she also mentions the Valeyard, which makes sense because that just happened. So yeah, there's a lot of confusion and then more confusion as they get their memories back because I'm not sure if they're getting their memories or a different version of them memories.
Yeah.
Then the last episode in Volume 4 is Restoration of the Daleks. The Dalek time strategist restores the Dalek armies of the universe, but wants to dispense with Davros. So Davros keeps the Doctor alive because he hasn't captured at one point. And he says, because you're an enigma in the timeline of the Daleks, like you're always a constant there. And then he mentions the cult of Skaro, Dalek Khan, the false prophet, the new paradigm. Dalek history and the Doctors are impossibly entangled. And I just like, wow, that is really a nice way to put that. That this is like the Lex Luthor to your Superman, the Joker to your Batman. The Doctor and the Daleks are impossibly entangled. I was like, that's beautiful. It feels like Remembrance of Daleks with the seventh Doctor that we did with Ace. Is that what that's called?
It's an R.
Yeah.
One. Yes,
But-
I think so.
But where you have a Dalek sort of civil war with Davros on one side and then the other Daleks, that's what this one feels like, but they're just overthrowing Davros as a power instead of Davros and his Daleks.
And where the Doctor destroys all of Gallifrey at the end.
Yeah. Or Skaro? Is it Skaro?
Skaro, sorry.
Oh, Davros is perfecting genetic manipulation on the nano level. So he's able to continue refining his Dalek creations. There are just not only Dalek warriors, but there's the Dalek strategist, which I think is the one that kind of does the mutiny to overthrow of Davros. But then there's also a Dalek emperor. So I think they created a Dalek emperor to replace Davros. There's just a lot going on in this one. As far as like Nicholas Briggs is again doing the Dalek voices, so he's got a lot of work to do in this episode.
In the first part, I think, of this volume, they met Daleks that were kind of like not quite fully formed.
Yeah, I think they were like, if this was an Iron Man suit, this is the Mark 1. As opposed to like the Mark 8 or Mark 7.
And that was like old Davros like doing it, right? Like,
well, see, when they put on that reverb of what we hear Davros normally, I thought that he would be in that wheelchair, but he might have been walking around with two eyes instead of that third eye. But again, it's not. You can't be like, "Hey, Davros, way to saunter in on those two legs of yours." That must be weird. So I imagine him looking more human than that like decrepit, feeble thing that he has to sustain his life in that Dalek bottom half skirt. But I don't remember. I think Davros is executed in this, but there's always a way for him to kind of get out of it. But I think I remember that happening. I don't know why I didn't write that down. But what I did write is that at the end of this, it is revealed that the Doctor has a grandson named Alex.
He's got quite the family.
Yeah, this one, I guess it ends sort of happily with the Doctor and Bliss. So yeah.
But then I mean, eventually he's got to go off, fight the Time War, or regenerate.
Yeah. Because
it seems interesting because I only got through the first 3 of the first volume. I hate to say it, I think that if I had listened to more, I'd be frustrated. It makes sense in the timeline of the Doctor, but there would be a part of me that's like, I want to see the Time War itself. So, I don't know. It's just kind of like, I think I would be very frustrated. And then with all the changes in the timeline and amnesia and memory loss, it's like, I'm out.
I think, though, what you want is probably with the John Hurt War Doctor audio dramas. I think that would do it too, or even the Derek Jacobi Master. Yeah, the Time Master or War Master.
War Master, yeah.
Oh.
But since we don't have anything else other than the TV movie and the short of Paul McGann, we wanted to do this to see how they would be. And I did enjoy parts of them, a lot of like 90% of it, but.
McGann is great.
Yeah, he's great. Anything he does for the Doctor Who franchise, he's 150% in.
Yeah, not all the actors from the TV show do well on the audio. From the modern show, it's like I've listened to some of them, and it's like it's almost like you're not even trying to act, But he's just really, really good.
But yeah, we wanted to do more coverage of Paul McGann as a Doctor. This was the best way to fit it into our what we're doing now with the Time War in the 50th.
Like I said, I'll finish it up. I can't recommend it for anybody but the most diehard of fans.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. But if you are a diehard, you might enjoy it.
Yeah, I would almost say can't remember who mentioned it, but when we did the Sarah Jane Adventure episodes, it was almost like, hey, these are new Doctor Who episodes that we never knew about. So
Yeah.
this is kind of like that for me. It's just be warned that it takes a while to get used to this type of storytelling, but listening to it more than once, and I would recommend listening to one episode in one volume in one sitting is the best way to do it, because then you won't be like, what happened? Where am I?
Right.
Break it up that way instead of trying to listen to one complete volume, which is 4 episodes mainly.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're remembering things pretty well.
I mean, I have just listened to it pretty recently, like within the past week. So yeah.
I mean, it helps that I just listened to the first 2 today, and then you listen to the the other, well, mainly the third one. So that's definitely helping me remember.
I mean, after figuring out kind of the structure and getting used to the storytelling, they are pretty enjoyable.
It just sucks that you can't like listen to it for the first time and be good. You have to kind of get used to it.
But that might mean like the other Big Finish audios will be easier, and like this one is probably a difficult one to get into because of the Time War and the changing stuff. But I mean, they're well produced. Yeah,
it's like you said, it's also very high concept, because if you don't know what the Time War is, you're gonna get lost. And I have listened to others. They're more contained into one volume, one CD.
Oh, okay.
Like you have each volume has 4 episodes, so I guess 1 episode, 1 CD. They're more digestible. That's what I was going for.
Okay, yeah.
That was easy.
So that wraps up the Big Finish audio of the 8th Doctor in the Time War. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time when the future becomes the present.
You've just listened to an episode of Who Knew?
Our wonderful theme music is by Michael Grady.
Find him on Facebook at The Universe Explodes.
All our episodes are engineered by Allburn.
You can find him at albernbinkley.com.
You can also find this show in several places.
Follow us on Twitter at Who Knew Podcast.
Subscribe, review, and listen to us on iTunes and Stitcher.
Or our YouTube channel, youtube.com/WhoKnewPodcast.
All our episodes are on whoknewpodcast.com.
Visit our Facebook page.
Please leave comments, reviews, and click like to help support Who Knew Podcast.
To listen to our show on your Amazon Echo device, enable the AnyPod podcast skill. Ask AnyPod to play the Who Knew Podcast.
This podcast is inspired by Doctor Who,
the longest-running sci-fi show in history.
And especially the revival, spearheaded by Russell T. Davis.
Thanks to Russell,
Sydney Newman,
Verity Lambert,
Ron Grainer,
Delia Derbyshire,
and all those involved in the adventures of our favorite Time Lord.
Your work continues to inspire and entertain.